Striker Scorpion 82 is now sponsored by Warhammer Combat Cards, a card battle game featuring your favourite Citadel miniatures from the 40k universe. Build your army decks, dominate opponents in player versus player action, collect and upgrade cards to fit your strategy, improve their power and unlock unique traits. Choose from all 40k factions, take part in campaigns based on iconic 40k battles, rise to the top of the leaderboard and win glory. Free to download and play, link is in the video description below or on the channel homepage, and by using the unique link it helps support the channel. Thanks and enjoy the game. Right, welcome to this in-depth painting tutorial, and in this video we're going to be taking on Dark Eldar. There's already a video out for them on the regular Striker Scorpion 82 channel. We cover infantry on there, but we're going to take that technique and we're going to apply it to vehicles. So we're going to take on this Dark Eldar Venom here. Now vehicles can be a daunting task. It's a lot bigger in scale than infantry, so we're going to try and apply this technique and show you how to do it on vehicles, and we'll paint this one up in the famous Necron Hunter colour scheme. So I'm going to take you through every stage. We'll go from start to finish, step by step. So if you're painting, then just use this video, pause it, do the next stage, follow along, and I'll take you right from the start to the very end. Just to go through some basics here. So the kit has been assembled and put together. There's nothing else to stick on here. It's ready to go. Then once I've constructed it, to speed things up, I have sprayed it with the Army Painter plate mount spray, giving it a coat of that, just straight onto the plastic, top and bottom, so the whole thing's evenly covered. And this is just through experience, I found that putting washes on that plate mount spray sort of can bubble and doesn't go on very well. So a trick that I found to make your washes go on nice and evenly and to cover that surface nicely is to actually give it a coat of matte varnish. Just a light coat. I've used Purity Seal here, I'd recommend that. So wait until the silver is dry, leave it a good few hours, and then give a light spray of Purity Seal, and that is a little trick that you can use to help that those washes go on nicely, and they'll evenly spread out across the miniature and it'll look a lot better. I battled with that for quite a while and then thought, well, matte varnish might solve it, and it works very well indeed, and that will just help those washes go on very nicely indeed. That's the preparation done, and having sprayed that silver and prepared it in that way, you save yourself a lot of time indeed. So I mean, this painting tutorial, it is about getting nice results, but also some time saving hints and tips as well. So that's prepared to that stage. We'll work to the same principles that I've shown you before, the 3 stages. So there'll be base colours that we'll do first, then washes, and then the final highlights. It's the same way I paint all of my miniatures, whatever faction I'm painting. So this miniature is actually on commission here. I'm painting it for someone else. So there'll be a slight variation in the markings on here, but we'll cover that later on. It just shows you can use different colours, so that's no problem. But for this commission, I'm not basing the fly base here. I'll cover that in another video. I'm just leaving that plain. So we'll be getting straight on to the miniature here. So paints that you'll need, I've already covered the 2 sprays. So plate mount by Army Painter, that gives you a nice silver base colour, and then the Purity Seal, give it a coat of that in preparation. And then paints here, most of these are the new paints, might be a couple of older ones. If you want to know all the new names, then you can Google search Citadel Paints conversion chart, and it brings up a nice colour chart there, and it gives you the old name and then the new name of the paints. So I'll just run through what I've got here. So there's metallics that you'll need. This is the old Mithril Silver, it's just a nice bright silver. Then Ironbreaker, that is the new colour. And then also Hashut Copper, it's the new colour as well. Then we'll just go on to regular colours. there is Abaddon black, then Moot green, Ceramite white, Ushabti bone, Evil Sunz Scarlet, and then also Wazdakka red, and then Flash Gitz yellow, and then that's it for base colours. And then for washes, in this one there's quite a few for this technique. There's Seraphim Sepia, Drakenhof Nightshade, Nuln oil, Aggrex Earthshade, and then finally Beil-Tan green. So those are the colours you need for this technique. Right, so I'm going to go on to the first stage here, and that's base colours. That's where you're going to put all the base colours on the vehicle, and you'll then have those all in place, and the washes go on top, and the washes will unify the miniature together. It gives you that nice effect. So it's not too important as to what colour you go for first. I've got the Hashut copper here first of all. So this is going to be for sort of the coppery, bronzy coloured parts of the vehicle. So I paint this base here, this foot plate that the pilot or the gunner stands on, and you notice that because I've already painted it silver, that just goes on really nice. You're going to need to give one coat. So immediately you can see that giving it that silver spray saves you a whole load of time. You want to be generally neat. You don't really want to get this copper onto the silver parts and interrupt the washes. So I'm just being neat as possible, not ultra neat, because the washes are going to fill in a lot of areas here, any ghosty parts. So you missed a bit here, well, you're going to be highlighting and painting over that again later on. So that's that done. I then tilt it and make sure I get the sides, back of it here, also on the inside here, and here. I then paint the engines. It's just to create a different metal effect to separate it from the whole sort of plating. And the bronze is quite nice. Bronze is quite, I use it on the Eldar as well. It's quite an alien feel to it, which is nice, better than just a regular sort of silver or whatever. You can give it sort of an alien kind of look. Actually painting this pretty quick here. So, and that's the thing about, you construct a miniature, a vehicle, it sits there for a while, and the longer you leave it, the longer you think it's going to take you to paint. But actually, when you just get stuck in, things can move along quite nicely. I'm just going to flip it over and paint the engine on the reverse side. Some people ask about how much do you paint at the underneath. You know, no one ever sees it. I just paint enough so that if it is turned upside down, then it looks okay. I wouldn't go overboard with my details, but I wouldn't leave it, because that can look terrible if it's seen. And then the underneath of this plate as well. Just scrubbing it in here. It's going on nicely, that copper. As I said, if this was grey, for example, you'd really struggle with this copper. You'd have to do 2 or 3 coats. But that silver just means it just goes straight on. The air intakes here, I fill those in with this copper as well. Just working the brush in. I want to try and get inside there so you can see the copper right towards the back of the intakes there and there. That's good. Now, see this grating here? That is going to be that colour, but I found there's no need for me to fill that in at the moment. I'll do that when I come to the highlight stage. So I leave that. What I do cover is this front grid here. That needs to be filled in. Done. Then for the weapons, any of the ammo like parts here, these bits, this sort of canister thing here, I do that in the copper, and also this sort of charger bit here as well. You're starting to break the, instead of being plain silver, you're starting to break the gun down into different sections as well. It's a nice way of doing it. Let's just do that, and there. And then you see the handle parts here for these spears. I do those as well, and again, so handy that that is already done for me in silver. There's two here, there's one there and there's one just here. So just run the brush around there and there. And again, look, say if I did flick the brush up here, I wouldn't be too fussed about that, because I'm going to run, later I'm going to highlight and run down there with the silver and cover up any mistakes that have been made anyway. I think, yeah, there's an ammo canister just under here. He's upgraded his vehicle here to have a second splinter cannon, which is a good idea. Just checking over. It's annoying if you miss a part and then you put the washers on later on, so it's good just to check over the whole thing, but that is it for that colour. Right, next up, as I said, it doesn't really matter, but Ushabti bone here. There's a few areas for this one. These skulls here on the spear, their base colour is this bone. One coat should be enough. Again, the silver is quite a nice starting point, because it's quite light. The bone goes on quite nicely, so just one coat will do. Because it's silver though, I try and fill in the eye sockets, make sure the whole thing is in the bone there. Trying to be neat with this one. That's going on nicely. Just work around, and when you get through your base colours pretty quick, then you start to think to yourself, you know, wow, I'm getting through this. And then when you start putting the washes on, then you're really getting this vehicle moving along nicely. Now, I didn't show you skin in the previous paint tutorial. I'm going to try to in this one. There's a little area I can do in skin, and that's his arms. I'll say that these arms are bare arms up to the gloves. So you're going to get a little bit of a tutorial on skin for Dark Eldar. Their skin obviously very pale looking, so their actual base colour isn't flesh. I'm actually going to do it in this bone colour. That just drains the figure any sort of warm colour, gives them this pale, sickly sort of look. So those arms are done in that colour there. I'm just making sure it's kind of nice. A slightly thicker coat, and that means I can just do with the one coat, and that's fine. That's pretty much it. There's no other bones or skin to do, so that's that colour done. Right, there's another colour here to do. I actually didn't mention it at the start, apologise. It's not green, it's the old colour. Just look up the new one. But it's just this kind of regular kind of green colour, and I use that as the starting colour for all of the sort of digital readouts and stones or crystal type things. So you've got this screen here that the pilot's looking at. That needs to be done in the green as a base colour. Try and catch all the edges on it. And then just looking, he's actually got one of these crystals on his chest there, so I paint that in the green as well. And I think that's pretty much it for him. Right, next colour, it's another green. It's the Moot green, or the old scorpion green. Just using that for all the poisoned weapon parts. So this chamber here, and I just fill the whole thing in Not worrying too much if it overflows, we'll trim it off with black in a minute, just in that gap there, and then just on the end. But there's a little silver trim there running around. I try and leave that, so I go up to that and then leave it. And then just make sure I catch the top. And then all the way around. And I fill in, actually fill that in, flood it with the paint. And there again. And then don't want to forget this time, there's more poison weaponry underneath. Second splinter cannon. We just fill that in. And there, and then here, up to that trim. Like that. Roll it over. And then now you can see just after a few colours, it's not plain silver anymore, it's really starting to fill out with some nice colours and interest. That's that done. Right, you then have, on the pilot here, some areas of cloth. They don't want to be silver, want them to be grey, and then they'll be shaded darker later on. So I'm just going to make up some grey here. Quickly with the black and the white. You can take a grey, but it's going to be quite a dark kind of grey here. So I'm just going to mix it up. It's just a bit darker than the greys that you have. That's just about the right colour there, if you can see that. You have Codex Grey, the old colour. It's just darker than Codex Grey. That's it. And the areas really, it's just he's got some. He's got the armour run up his leg, and then in between that is just this cloth. So I'm just going to fill that in with the grey. I don't want it to be silver. And then he's got some gloves on. I don't want them to be silver. I'm going to make them this grey as well. And that's all you're going to do with this grey. It'll be shaded and you can leave it. It's not a significant part of the miniature. But you don't want it looking silver. You want it to be nice and grey. And just pushed out of the way. That's pretty much it. His chest here actually, he's got armour plate at the top of his chest, but underneath is cloth. So I'm going to just fill that in as well. So that's that done. Right, next stage, and it's the last base colour, and that's black. There's some panels on here that will be in black. You're free to choose whatever ones you want, but for the venom, I do this part here, and again, all pretty neat here. So just going to tuck it in like that, and then just run it along. And if your paint's good enough, just one neat coat, nice and straight with your brush marks, fills it in just nice. Then I catch the edge here, run it round, and then the back edge. Like so. These round bits, which can be annoying, just filling them in, flip it over, and then just fill in this area here as well. You know, you need to, its vehicles is an important part of any Dark Elder force, so getting the painting for these right is crucial. But that's filled that out nicely. Let that dry. Then I'll do the other side in a moment. Also any flags I do in black for this colour scheme as well. You'll also find that when you put the base colours on your vehicle, you start to feel more confident about getting the vehicle done. What I mean is you stare at something and it's all silver, and you think, oh, where am I going to start? But gradually as you start putting your colours on, you get to know the vehicle and the layout of it, and it all starts to come together even at this early stage. Just run my brush along the edges here, don't want to miss anything. So once this black is on, if it's nice and even, that's pretty much it for the black. Always wary about highlighting black. You can make it look very grey, so often I leave it or just give a minimal highlight to it. For this one, this flag, we're just going to leave it like that. So I'm being nice and neat, making sure the black goes on. And again, leaving these areas, because you're saying, oh look, you leave the grey, there's no more work to do, you leave the black, there's no more work, and that's all deliberate. It's all to save time, and it's to put the emphasis in the right place. I want the emphasis to be on the armour, that's where I'm going to put the work in, and on the patterns and so on. So there's other areas of the vehicle that I don't want to be too loud, I want them just to be not too significant. So the areas of black here will be one of them, or this flag at least. So got the flag done, they're done. It's a fair bit of black. The casing for the weaponry is in black as well. I need to be neat here. So I just go around here, tuck brushing in behind, then come down. You still see I'm using quite a thicker brush, but it's got a nice tip to it, so I'm able to direct the paint quite neatly with it. That's pretty good around there. Remember, the washes are going to fill this in and link it all together quite nicely. Right, for the chamber here, you see I've filled it in with the green. All I do now is just run the paint, or run the brush at an angle across the edge of that, and that's all I need to do. The shading will fill in that green later on. So again, that's just to save you a bit of hassle with that. Just run it along now, filling in the gaps in the ridge. Got these bits that stick up. See that there? If I go over one of them, it doesn't matter because I'll re-go over that with the silver later on. Then just here, like so. It's not worried about filling in this, the shading will do that. I just want to be careful about running it neatly to the edge of that. That's fine. I've got flicked a tiny bit black there. That'll be alright because I'll go over it again anyway. That's pretty neat. So you can see the casing there. I'll just repeat that. Let's see how I'm doing it. You've got to be careful with the black, that you don't touch the work that you're already working on. So think about the order that you're going to paint this black in, so that you don't disturb work that you've already done. So if you put your hand on something that's drying and then you move your hand, you take that paint and then place it somewhere else on the model, and you can make a real mess. So just be aware of what you're doing. Just running the brush underneath here, and then at an angle. If I hold the brush at an angle like this, I can run it along there and it won't go into the void there. It's going well. Again, I'm going to run it along the top, just filling in all the gaps. Quite happy with that. Just going to thicken the black along here a little bit. Looks good. So I'll do the rest of this panelling. It's just see the flag here, I might give that a second coat. Probably will, just to strengthen, make it nice and solid. So I'll do the other side here, and then I'll just show you, I've got the other casing here underneath to do for the other venom cannon, or splinter cannon. The other panel I paint black is this one, at the front. And again, I don't fill in the void here, I leave that, I just run up to the edge of it. Like so. Don't worry about filling it in, because the washes will do that for me. See that, run along there, along there. That looks good. I'm actually surprised how quick this has gone. So it just shows that it doesn't take too long to get your base colours done. As I said, once your base colours are on, you're really making good progress with the miniature, and then your washes are going to be saving you. You're going to create an effect that is going to save you lots of time as well. For underneath here, this panel, you see I've painted the top, the side, and then I think I will leave the underneath and not paint the underneath. Just do the side up to there neatly, and that will do for that one. So I'm not going to need to paint them. That's neat enough as it is. And then here, just doing the front inside one, and then two. Just get my angles here. There's a little round crystal there. Doesn't matter if I cover it, I can always pick it out later on. And then just filling in like so. That's done. So that already starts to create, that darkens the miniature down there, looks good. So we've just got this bit here to do, and then the underneath, and then that's all the base colours done. Right, so that's the base colours done. Just finished the black off there, all the panelling is finished. That's just drying off here. I'm going to make a start on the washes. So this is the second stage, and this is where you'll see the miniature all joined together. You'll see the details all picked out. It's going to save you loads of time. The washes will do the work for you. You just have to apply them correctly, nice and evenly. That's the trick with vehicles. A lot of people have been asking about how to apply the washes, get them looking nice. So that's what I'll show you here on this next stage. So the first colour we have, and you're going to have to do this in steps because you're going to have to let one wash after another dry. So Seraphim Sepia, and we use this one to pick out the copper. So I've got quite a large brush here. You want to be able to control the flow, but I just stick it in the that sort of ammo, whatever it is, just there, and then this one I just flood it into there, and it makes a start at picking that out. I don't want it to flood any other areas, just the areas of copper only. So there and there. Then the bars, the handle grips here for these spears that are stuck into the flyer, those need to be done. They're copper. If I go over the edge for them, it doesn't matter. I'll pick that out later on, neaten it up later on. So they're done. Then you've got the base here, the sort of foot plate that the gunner stands on, passengers as well. So I flood that nicely with the wash. Make sure it goes into all the gaps. See the gaps here? I just work it so that they get filled in. It's a priority to make sure they get filled in. That looks good. And then I tilt it over, fill in their sides. Any spare or where it's puddled, just as your brush starts to run out, just soak a bit up. Then the engines, flood them, work it in. Again, you're seeing this is pretty quick. There, there, and then the inside of the engine. Just flip the vehicle over. Keep it off the hull here. Look, I flicked a bit onto the silver hull. Get that off, because that will show through. So you want to keep, the silver hull nice and clean. Just working that in there, and you see it's not finished the copper off, but it's started to tone it down and to fill in the shady areas like that and like that. Then remember you've got the copper here in the engine intake, so fill that in, just working the brush to make sure that ink gets into those cracks. That's what the ink is there for, it's to fill in the details, so I'll make sure I work that in. Again, I'm going to leave that here, even though it is in that copper. I'm going to leave it, because we'll shade it with the other colours, but the front plate here needs to be filled in with the copper. So just work it into there. Looks good. And then that's pretty much it, just the ammo canister here on the second splinter cannon, and that's pretty much it. So that's shaded in. I'm leaving the bone use another colour for that a bit later on. I used to do multiple layers, but it darkened it down so much it was hard to build it up. So I'm actually going to do one wash on the bone. That's a bit later. So wash that out. You can, to save time, start another wash that is not going to touch the Seraphim Sepia as it dries. And the other colour is the black, the Nuln oil. And that's the black areas, which are just going to be the areas that are regular metal. There's not too much, but there's some. This spear end, and then the details on the spear, all the way up to that joint, and then the spear itself running down. Looks good. There. And this one right all the way to the very edge. Spear on the other side. All those spikes and bits, just make sure they're all filled in. Looking good. That's it. Other spear. Like so. Top of the spear. And then I've found, especially with black, if you put a coat of this on your on the black flag here, or any other areas that are black if you want to, that will keep the paint on. It will seal the paint, almost like a varnish. It will seal that black paint on nicely, and when you're working on the vehicle you'll find that that black paint won't rub off quite so easy. So just fill that in with the black as well. You can do the other panels if you want, or I can put other washes over them when we do the bodywork. Remember the areas that I said that were grey? They can all be done with the Nuln oil shade, so just fill them in. Just working the brush around his sort of waist area there, and then just around the glove. The rest I'll fill in with the other colour, the other washes a bit later. Just checking over, I think that is it. Oh yes, these chain snares here, whatever they are, those I don't do in the blue green colour, they're actually regular shading for the metal, so I fill all them in. Very easy, it will flow in nicely because you've got the silver already done and the varnish already done on there. It flows in nicely. Save yourself so much time if you do it this way. So that's there, and then just the other side, working it in. Just looking on top here, making sure that I've caught it on top there nicely. Just looking underneath. That's it. That looks pretty good. And that is actually it, about done. So those two washes, now I'm not going to interrupt them now. Just to be consistent, I'm just going to put some black around here just to seal this, because I don't want this paint all coming off. Just very quickly. See the chips here? It doesn't matter because it's going to be chipped later on. Anyway, it's mistakes that can slow you down when you're painting. You see an area you've missed, you have to reopen a pot, put it on. But when you know what you're doing and you know what the overall colour scheme is, there's a lot of mistakes you can actually ignore because they have no effect on the end result. It's just trying to keep that silver. The main area that I'd be worried about is keeping this silver area clean, not letting any paints or washes get onto that. Because any mistakes will show through the washes that you put on. But that's two washes done. That's good progress. We'll leave it there, let it dry before moving on to the next stage. Right, so continuing on with the washes here, the next one I want to do is the Beil-Tan green, and that's where we're going to start on this metal work here. So you just take the paint, there's no harm running over the black, it just seals it in. It doesn't change the colour of the black at all, but it just helps to keep that black on there without it chipping and rubbing off. And then I just apply the green wash. Quite a large brush here, not too big. Big enough to carry enough of the wash, but still small enough to sort of control it and not go over the edges. I just fill in here, and then notice, look, I'm controlling the direction of the brush here, making sure it's nice and even, and that covers it nicely there. You don't want to stop here. If I stop, you'll get a line of wash along there. I want to keep this constantly flowing Don't start different areas, just keep it going whilst it's wet. Just working the brush into the cracks there, moving it along. Don't stop whatever you do, you have to just keep going. Because if you leave it, it starts to dry, and then lines and so on start to form, and they're impossible to budge. So I'm just making sure it's all nice and even. I'm quite happy that looks nice. Just move it around. Just fill in there. All the cracks here, fill them in. And just keeping an eye. If you get pools start to form, and just drag the brush through. Spread the wash around. Don't let it form ponds or puddles of wash. Again, just going to work it into there. Just going to write neatly to this edge. That's a nice place to stop with the wash because it's the edge of the sculpting anyway. And then just coming back on myself here, just evening this out. Just a bit of practice. Because there's areas of this paneling that you're not going to touch with your highlights later on. So it's good to get it neat and then not touch it. Just rolling it around here. Just on a whole area. I can touch this dry part here and use that to hold on to the miniature. So I've got the cockpit here. I just fill in side panels. Work the brush in, around, fill in all the panel here. That's fine. Then carefully his chest, plates, head, and then the panels around the back, side, and it's just a quick way of filling that all in. I've got some green on the skin, it's not going to make too much difference. That should be alright to go over that again. None of these poles need doing, they've been done with the black. So just the inside of the cockpit here, this back part. So filled that in. And then just going to now check around the other side, make sure I haven't dribbled any wash around to the other side, so that looks fine. Come back and do this area here, fill that all in nicely. So almost just scrubbing the wash on. Don't want a thick layer of it because you get streaks of it. That looks fine. Just check around the other side, it hasn't overflowed, maybe a little bit here, just take that away. That's it. Then we'll flip it over. I've got the inside here to do, this air intake. Like so, run it around. Make sure I catch the insides there, I'm just going to do the other side. Just working quickly, confidently, to make sure I get it all covered. Then I'm going to move on to this part, and this one I work the brush across this way and flood all the voids there with the wash, and that does all the hard work for you. Right inside there, flood that all in, and around this part, and then I run a fair amount of the stuff along to get enough on there, and then just work the brush in to the cracks along here, working the brush along, and then just neatly. You see it all links in, these two shades have linked together now. Fill in this part of the weapon. Right, so you see the weapon here. I'll come back to that actually. I've got to stick to this rule of keeping it going before it gets dry. So we'll continue with the rest of the panelling. Bit of flood in there, we'll just take that away, work it around the air intake, and then just with the brush, if you overflow you can just dab it on a bit of tissue to lose the excess, then just soak up any puddles and use the strokes of the brush to control that. Looks good. See here, look, I've overflowed on this edge. Doesn't matter, that's where a highlight's going to be, so we'll cover that over. Edges like that don't matter so much. But that's all the panelling done. So for the gun, you see the poisoned green there, the Moot green. Just flood that. Just flood it with some wash, and you'll see what happens is it shades all that edge for you. It actually looks really good. I'll just do the other side. Just flood that, work out, take out any bubbles. Done. Flood this bit. That looks good. And just flood the other side, working it in, and it shades it all for you. Looks really nice. Okay. I think that's done with the green. The only area that hasn't been touched by washes now is the bone. We'll come back to that here on the skulls. And then this silver here, which we will do just with blue, just to again make a different type of metal on the vehicle there. But that's that done. That's the green. Let that dry. Just check over the model. Make sure you haven't missed any bits. It's a good time to check. So the front of that. Make sure everything's covered. Just checking over here. Oh, looks good. Okay, so we'll let that one dry. Right, next wash here is Aggrex Earthshade, and that's the second and final wash for all of your metallic parts. This wash is still drying, but it's not really going to overlap. So the weapon here, sort of the ammo type thing, just there, then there, flipping it around there, and this provides just the deeper shade. And you see it, you've done your black up to the edge, but now that shade has just filled in all those cracks for you and just left with the ammo part there. It looks great. Just underneath here, just remember to fill in that one, and that side. The front panel here, just run the wash in there. It's all starting to join the figure together now, looking nice. And then we'll fill in these air intakes at the front, again working the brush in to make sure the wash goes in, and again so. We're going to wash on the hull there, just take it away, wash the brush out, and then just move it over. That's got rid of that. Just being realistic, you're going to make mistakes as you go along, so it's best just to correct those quickly. Underneath here, the foot plate, or a bit where the crew stand on, just fill that in again, just pushing the brush right up to the edge, making sure that is all filled in nicely. Around here, really making sure your crevices are filled in, and then just taking any excess away. The engines, and you'll see when this wash goes on, it makes it all nice and deep, the shading all nice and strong, and you'll hardly know that there was silver underneath. That looks lovely and solid. And just flip them around. Engine again, just on this side, there and there, and then working the brush in to the nozzle there, and then again on this side. Wash is going nicely, quite quick. And we've got this plate here to fill in. Just fill that in there. That's good. Any excess, just take it away. Okay, right then, what you're doing extra is the bone. So the skulls here, we just get one coat, and that adds, it's a deep shade, nice dark colour, but also it's got a brown in it, so it's nice for doing the bone here. And it also leaves enough of the original colour, so when you put your highlight on later on, it's not going to be too hard to build it back up again. Just running around, making sure that the brush fills in all those eye sockets. If you flood it with a bit of this brown, it makes it dark enough that you won't have to do any other work on it. Like so, looks good. Then remember to do the handles here on the spears, just another shade, making them deeper looking, stand out a bit more, like so. And then the skin here, we just flood that with the same colour. Quite simple, just a little bit of shading, and that's done that. So again, see the figure starting to unite together. It's looking good now with that shading. So we'll let all that dry, and then we'll put the final shade on when that's completely finished. Right, the final wash is the Drakenhof Nightshade, and that's to give us that two-tone effect on the plate here on the vehicle. So you can have hints of green and then hints of blue sort of mixed together, and the two colours working together, just to create that effect on the old Dark Eldar Codex, that kind of eerie kind of armour. That's what I've tried to recreate here. So exactly the same really as the green, same process, putting it on, filling in the gaps, and then using the brush to control the brush strokes, or control the amount that's on the armour there. Look, it starts to spread itself out quite nicely. Just using the brush to control that. Again, working quite quick, because if it starts to dry and then you go over it again, the edges will go solid, and you'll lose that evenness. It's gone on nice and smooth there. Working it into all the gaps here, run along the top, and leave the other side again, just to concentrate on this part. I've got to be careful here because it's starting to dry around this side. So I will just quickly do the other side here, and just go up to this edge, like so. Then dragging away the spare with the brush, so it doesn't start to form these puddles. Just finish off this part here whilst it's still wet. That's gone on fine. Get this gap here, I missed that. And then continue on here. Fill in the gaps. Just working it in. That looks good. There's a bit of muck there, just take that away. Working it in. Do the working in part first, and the final part you do is just where you drag out the wash, like so. That's looking good. That's the most important part, it's the part that you see. Now that's done, I can do the other parts. So we'll just fill in the detail here. As I said, the wash doing all the hard work for you. All this detail being filled in, not with much skill or effort at all. The washes do all of that special effect for you. Just using the brush again to take away the spare. And here. That's it. Looks fine. I'm going to do the rest of it here. You've got the gun. See where the plain silver is? You just go for just blue there now, and that creates a different metallic shade. Front, both sides and the front, just get underneath. And again the same, all the gun barrel now, even the metallics on top. Fill that all in, and you'll see all that edge now, all just filled in with a wash. The cockpit, same areas again, everywhere that you did green. Not too fussed if you get this on the black that you've done the blues, quite similar. It's just important to fill that in, make sure all the shading's done. Working the brush around, and then chest plates, head, back of the neck as far as I can reach, around the hands there, that's all shaded in. Nothing to do on those poles, so I'll flip it over, and we'll run the brush a nice amount there, run it along. Just going to catch underneath here. Don't really want to flood any areas where I've done the bronze. Can leave that. So one bit I missed with the black earlier on, see the end of this bit here, I've just painted that solid black. Then now just putting the washes over the top. But working the brush along, same as you did with the green. So that's that side done, we'll do this side now. Again, you don't want to spend too long on the bottom of a vehicle because you're not hardly ever going to see it. But with the washes, it fills in all of the underside details nicely. Just make sure that's all in there, and then this. Make sure this gun is filled in. Not too much. Don't want to flood too much in there. It's a bit too much, so I'll drag some. Instead of rinsing your brush out or stabbing it away, just do some other areas with it quickly. Come back to it and just suck up a spare. That's fine. And just around the intakes, just getting the shading in, and then like so, and then on the other side, scrubbing it in, and then with the brush strokes, neatening it off. That looks good. That is pretty much it. Starting to dry already. There's a bit of old brush on there. I'm just removing that. And just, so it's wet. There it is, that's all your shades done. Vehicle's looking good now, and you see the way it's all unified now. All the shading's done, it's linking the whole vehicle together. So you are ready, once that's dry, to go on to the final stage. Just checking over to make sure there's no gaps and bits that I've missed. If you do later on discover that, just take a finer brush and just fill in the details that you've missed there, but that looks pretty good. There's a bit here. Just catch him behind there. That's it, can't see anything else, that's good. We'll let that dry totally, and then we'll come back and do the final highlights. Right, next stage is the final highlights. I tend to do the copper first. We're going to put one highlight on this just to bring it up nicely. So you're taking your original colour, the Hashut copper. I'm just going to put it on a palette here. And then just a little bit of water. Now take the mithril silver, that's the bright silver. And I just want to make, it's quite strong pigment, so it lightens up the copper with only a small amount. I'm just creating that highlight colour, you can see it there. It's just a brighter version of the original. And then I just basically run that brush over the top of the copper area, avoiding filling in any details. It should be very easy because if you keep your brush at an angle, then you should avoid filling in any details. Just carefully run around. Keep the paint flowing nicely. I like to add a little bit of water to the brush, and then just paint it on. And the pigment's strong enough, especially in the silver. I've found that only one coat is required. It's quite quick, you see that's brought that up nicely. All the shading's done for you. So just run it around this foot plate here. That's looking really good. And then nice and neatly around this edge here. One, and around this rim. Here you can see I've done the edge of it, and then paint this edge. Just run the brush along, avoiding going into the cracks there. Quite straightforward, this. That looks good, and you can see now that plate's done. And then on the back here, the inside of these bits I leave that shaded, that can stay as it is. Just catch these end bits here. Also just the inside there and there. I do underneath, because it doesn't take very long. It just neatens it up. There. Using quite a big brush here. This is actually a base coat brush, but this is an older brush, so a lot of the bristles have worn away, and it's left quite a nice fine tip to it. It's not too thick, so I'm able to keep quite a lot of paint on the brush, but also keep it quite neat at the same time. And then just over the top of that there. That's basically what you're doing to all of the copper areas, the air intakes here. I just do the surface of them. There. Just a case of dragging the brush over the top. There's one side. And then just doing the other side there. Again, just keeping the brush at an angle. And just highlighting that. Looks very good. For the engines, here, I keep less paint on the brush. There's not much paint on this brush now. And I just do like a gentle highlight with that. Enough paint to catch the detail, but not enough so that when I scrub the brush over the top it floods the cracks. So again, I'll just do it on this side. Found that you can just scrub the brush onto here and it picks it up fine. Just catching the ends of the nozzles there. Just scrubbing out the brush. It seems to just work fine by doing that. You could spend ages painting around, but there's no need to. It's just a slight scrub there with the brush, and that picks up the details just as well. Actually nice and quick. Like so. You can see now it's picked up the engine details just nicely. The same again for the handles on these spears or flags here. Just not much paint on the brush, and then just going, if you have detail at this angle, then you want to take the brush along at that angle so it scoots along the top and doesn't fill the detail. If you have too much paint on your brush, then the cracks will start getting filled in. If you don't have enough paint on there, then no paint will really go onto the surface. Just getting that balance right. There's paint on here, but it's not saturating the figure, and then I can see that's going on. That's starting to bring the highlight up on those. And again, with this one, if we get paint on here, it doesn't matter because I'm going to be repainting the silver there anyway. That's fine. Those poles look pretty good now. The detail on them is picked out quite nicely. Take a little bit more paint now. I'm just going to try and stretch what I've mixed up. I'm actually running out. So I'm going to take a bit more copper, a bit of silver. Just making sure I've got a good match there. A bit more of the copper. Don't put too much silver in, because then it just becomes silver, and you want to keep the original colour in there. So what we've got left is the parts of the gun here. So I just catch here, and then these bits. Not too much, just enough to burnish that up, bring it up nicely. Catch the end, and then like so. So it looks pretty good. And then along the top. And as I said, the pigment's strong enough that it just catches one coat. Will bring that up quite nicely. Just run the brush in the gap there. Such a nice colour for a dark elder, this coppery kind of colour. It's a nice sort of alien colour. And just underneath, again just catching the highlight on there. And on the other side, just catching the highlight, that's good. So, just looking over the model here, just going to pick this one out. That's better. Just checking over, making sure I've got everything. The last bit is this ribbing underneath. I like to make that copper. So, with a nice amount on the brush, I just run that over the detail there. The washes have done their work in between, and now you're just picking out by running the brush along. It's quick, but it's nice just to introduce that colour underneath. So I'm running it along here. It's nice to paint it, you see it underneath and also from the side. You're just matching in the ribbed here and ribbed there, it sort of matches the whole thing in nicely. I may well need to do 2 coats of this because it's the first time I put copper onto the underside here. So looks good. Then just right around the front here, I'm just going to highlight the copper work that's already been done. Like so. So that just does that. Mix up a bit more of the copper. It started to dry, so I'm just going to put another layer on that. All the way along. That's good. There we are. Alright, so that's that done. You see that effect, very quick, and yet that ribbing there in that copper looks really, really good. So that's that done. That'll dry pretty quick, and then we'll go on to the next colour. Right, this next stage is sort of the main part to the highlight. So that's taking Ironbreaker paint, and I've got a detail brush here. Fine detail is a bit too fine, so I've just got a detail brush with a nice tip to it, and I'm going to be painting the silver. It's going to take a while, it's the most time consuming part. So all I'm looking to do is paint the edge highlights, so where you've got all this panelling, I edge all of that, and then after edging all of it, I also then do directional brush strokes. So the vehicle's going to be travelling this direction, so I then do brush strokes along that way to make it creates the look of speed. They do it in cartoon pictures as well, and it's just a way of sort of, it's like weathering or putting some wear onto the vehicle, and it just breaks up these solid panels. Instead of having a solid colour all the way around here of silver, you're breaking it up by putting these strokes in. But you'll see as we go along. I'm going to do this panel here, and then I'll apply it to the rest of the figure. So the stones here, or these raised areas, not really stones, so just do those, and then I do this whole bit solid, and then I do my edge. We'll run up to here, so put this edge in like so, and then I edge the intake here, these vents, like so. So just continue on there. Just with the brass colour, the Hashut copper, I just highlighted a little bit there. That little panelling has got some on as well. But just continuing on with the highlight. So I run the brush along the edge here. Neat as possible now. Do that nice and neat, and then just fade that area there just a little bit. Can water the brush down a little bit just to fade that in. That's it. See, that looks better. Just fade it there. And then the panel, where the two panels meet, you get a gap in between, so I edged that. This is the fiddly part of the colour scheme, but it creates that nice armour look that you want. Makes it nice and metallic, and yet keeps the eerie colours, that green and the blue, coming together to make quite a nice colour scheme. Like so. So you can see that edging on there. And then I'll show you an area. We'll do this side panelling here. So I just fill out the top with colour and then just drag the brush across, almost doing like a dry brush or a highlight, and that just starts to fade that down. It's solid at the top and then fading it out in the middle. I do that both sides, and then just a solid edge along the top. You could spend ages just individually going around, but I don't think there's any need for it. Just a quick run of the brush up there, and that just picks out that quite nicely. That's pretty much it, just picking out the details everywhere else. So we'll just carry on with our panel here. So what I'll do is edge this first. All the way around. You've got to have a nice flow to your paint to do this. If your paint is thick, then the paint will stutter and stop and it won't look tidy. To get that nice smooth sweeping silver on there, it's because the paint is thinned down quite nicely. I add a fair bit of water to this. You can tell if your paint's thin enough. Another tip here: put your water in, shake it up, and if the paint flows, see that paint is starting to just flow when I tilt it quite nicely, that's telling me that paint is nice and thin. If your paint sits there and won't move, it's way too thick. So once you've got, just move that, once you're at this angle here, you then, if I tilt in this direction, then take the brush, there's some paint on there, and I just run some strokes along. And again, this is where you can have it quite watery, because I want it to flow nicely, not be too strong. I want it to fade out as I do that. So you can see there, that's just giving me that effect. It's quite hard to master. As I said, if your paint is too thick, it will be difficult. So I'm adding even more water to this now. And it's just pulling the brush across so that the brush clips the front, and then as I pull it back it eases off. So it's just that motion there. Practice on something else that's spare if you need to develop your skill, because there is a bit of skill at doing it, but it's worth doing, and that just creates that sort of burnished look. It adds that look of speed to the model. That silver's not too strong, it's quite watery, so you can it flows nicely and it's not too strong when it goes on. But that's that panel complete there. So you edge everything, and then just where the front of the vehicle is, then you just do these panel effects. Right, it's done the silver here across the whole of the vehicle. It's taken a while. It's the most time-consuming stage. Once that's done, you know that you've broken the back of this project. So just done the lining on the edges here. Showed you how to do that panel earlier with the brush strokes coming back, and then see the inside of the cockpit there, the same process again, just filling out some of the details here. I also mixed up a bit more of that bronze highlight, and I've just done these ammo canisters there, just picking out details on the panels there, the buttons and so on, the the round bits. And also the poles here coming up, just repainted them. I've just seen that I've missed a bit here, so I'm just going to run the lead belcher along the base of this pole. And so you just go up to the edge, wherever the copper's gone over, it doesn't matter, just repaint over the top, just filling that in. Looks fine. The other area is the where the panels face out here, the edging of them. I do those in the lead belcher as well, just tidying all that up to make them look good. Then come around, just details on the pilot there. Just picking out details on the dashboard and just doing the same effect, just painting the edge trim on the armour, on his chest and around the face. Right, then just underneath as well, just doing the same process, just highlighting the different areas. The chains, snares hang down, just run the brush over them, highlighting them as well. I can use a bigger brush for that. Not too much paint, you don't want to fill in the detail, but just run it along, picking out the detail there. It's pretty much all done, but just a skim of a highlight will pick that out, make it look a bit stronger. And that is pretty much it. So as I said, that's the main part done. You've got your metallics pretty much sorted out. I can do one more metallic, and that's where you take the mithril silver, that bright silver, and it's up to you. You can use it to pick out some extreme highlights. This blade here at the top, I'm just going to make that even brighter, so it just glistens a bit more, just a bit on top. And then the gun here, you see this other silver that we shaded just with the blue, then I will highlight that as well, just picking out that silver and making it brighter. So the shading's done for you, and you just run the brush over, picking out the highlights. So I don't do too much, just a bit there, and then just where it arches round, swing it round on the back, just picking out the highlights there, and then round on the other side, like so. As I said, not too much, just picking out the main parts like that, and that's brought that up nicely. It's made it another separate metallic on that. Just zooming in a bit there so you can see how that weapon's come out. I then take the silver and run it along these ribs, these sort of spine bits sticking out here, doing this nice bright silver. There's a little one underneath as well, already shaded for you. And then I run the brush along the top, just around the front, and flip the model over, and then just run the brush along, picking out those spine bits again there and then underneath, and that brings them up looking good. Starting to pick out the details now, and then I'm going to do the same thing underneath here. Just run the brush along, nice and easy. Just make sure I catch the front, and then just catch these studs on the other side. A simple little touch to make, but makes those guns stand out just that bit more. The other area that I do with this silver is the face on the sort of solid mask that you get with these. So I just fill the whole thing in, leaving a gap where it meets the edge of the other, where it meets the edge of the metal here, so it's all shaded, and then just fill it in, fair amount of paint, and just fill that in all the way around. I think solid silver looks quite cool. for them. Like so. Like that, I think it looks quite cool. Just checking over, I think that's pretty much it for the model there. Yeah, so that's all your metallics finished. The model's really starting to come along well now. We're pretty much going to run this down. There's a few bits left to do. We've got the patterns obviously to do, some chipping effects that I'll show you as well. But you really are sort of looking at approaching 2/3 of the way through. So as I said, when you get to this kind of stage, you can see you're pretty much getting an idea of how the end model is going to look. And it's starting to, what we're going to do next, everything that we're going to build up now will be enhancement, so it's going to get more and more enhanced, look more and more brighter and striking as we go along. Right, next stage we're going to do, as this is detailed, I'm going to try and stay zoomed in here, try and keep it all in focus for you. So we're going to work on the green areas. So we've got the poisoned weaponry here, and we've got like a control panel here as well to do in this little diamond. We'll try and get that all done in one go here. I'm just going to open up the white as well. So I've got my Ceramite white, Flash Gitz yellow, Moot green, and then the snot green, that's the old colour, all lined up here. So snot green first of all, and I just use that to work on the panel here. You can see it, the little dashboard that he has, and I use that to strengthen the colour that's already there. If you can see, I'm painting 3/4 of it, and I'm leaving the top left hand corner in the darker shade. That's where the white's going to go. You'll see it a bit later on, but the rest I fill out, and that just strengthens that colour again. That's that done. Next is the Moot green. On the little jewel that's on his chest there, the green little jewel, I just use that to highlight the bottom right hand corner. So you can see it there. Bottom right hand corner has the Moot green on it, and then you've got a middle area of the normal colour, and then the top left hand corner as well. I'll put the white dot. I'll put that white dot in now, so that whilst it's focused in here, you can see it. It's just a small amount of the white on the tip of a brush, and then just one touch spots that in. You can see it there, top left hand corner, one little spot, and you've created yourself a simple little gem. That, you know, it's a nice little detail to put on, not too much effort, and it just creates that richness. It makes it look like you've put a lot of work and effort, a lot of detail into the model, when in fact that's quite a simple thing to do, a bit of a highlight and a dot. But you've created a little jewel there. I want to repeat the similar technique. If I just hold it there on this dashboard, so I want to run a Moot green highlight along this edge and the bottom edge, and then I can fill it out just a little bit in the corner. You see the way that's highlighted there? It looks good. And the rule I follow, if it's a large panel, then I usually try and put 2 dots in. I usually try and put a big dot and then squeeze in a little dot. If it's a large jewel or a large panel, then that's what I usually do, and that's pretty much it. I can leave it at that. If you want to add more detail, you can. You can take the Moot green and you can paint some like some crosshairs on there or some other detail. I like to leave it just as it is. That looks good enough, and you've picked out the detail nicely on the panel there. So that's those done. That's jewels and control panels sorted out. If you look at Dark Elder Raiders and so on, there's similar things for you to paint on them. So then we're going to go into the poison stuff, poison weaponry. Just repaint the Moot green on the tip, and this green colour, this is why I chose it, it's so bright and striking. You see how it lifts out the gun here. So you can see I've picked out the end, and then again the paint's quite nice and thin. I'm going to run it on the inside of the barrel. Steady hand and a nice tip on the brush, and that fills that in just nice. See the way that strengthens that. Just repeat that on the other side. So as I cross over the top, I'll make sure I get all of that. Make sure I get the front. And then the side. And then the underneath. And then I put paint on my finger now, just to, like a mini palette that you can, that's handy. And then I run the brush along the inside there, and that's enhanced that again. As I said earlier, if you make a mistake, you flick a tiny bit of black in there or whatever, when you go over that again, then that covers up any mistakes. So that's that one done. I'll do the one underneath here as well. Right, so you've got this final highlight to do. I take Moot green, I'm just going to put it on my finger now so you can see the colour. I then take the Flash Gitz yellow. I'm just looking to mix up. I'm sure you've never seen anyone do this with their finger now, but it's a recent habit that I've got. Just remember to wash your hands before you go out. So I just catch the highlight here on the gun. You see that just increases that highlight. And then for the middle of the poison weaponry here, I just catch just a little bit. I don't go the whole length, just a bit in the middle. You see that creates a kind of like a pulsating effect in there, and it just again enhances that yellow. It's the bit you want to show off, that nice yellow colour. And a lot of people commented saying it's a nice option to take. Again, just run it down the inside there, and then a bit on the end of the barrel, catch the top, and that will do. And then I'll just do the underneath here. One, a bit on the inside. You don't have to do this highlight, but I like to, just to enhance that green colour. Done, and then just take a bit more and stick that on. That's it. Right, we're going to do Dark Elder skin here and the bone. It's actually the same process for both. So it just shows you how I want this Dark Elder skin to look. So remember we did a base colour of the Spatty Bone, and then we gave it a wash of the Aggrex Earthshade. Just looking to pick out the skin again with the Spatty Bone. You can try and pick out individual muscles, but it will mean a very strong shade there because it's been shaded quite heavily. The muscles will be picked out when I do the final highlight on this. So what I'm doing is just pretty much just getting the shape of the arm, and the actual roundness of the muscles will pick out a bit later on. If you see what I mean. If I paint individual muscles, it's not going to unify the skin there. So I'm just pretty much painting where I originally did the base colour, but just leaving the edges where it joins onto the rest of the body, leaving that all shaded, and the area where the gloves are, leaving that shading. It does that kind of shading for me. That's drying quite nicely, so we'll just show you the next part. You just take the Spatty Bone and then take, say, just over 50% white, maybe a bit more. You want the strength of the white coming through. You want the Spatty Bone coming through, but you want it to be nice and bright with the white. You'll see when I put this on. So now I'm going to highlight the individual muscles. You've got the one on the shoulder. You've got the one just there, and then this one just before the glove. Now you can see that's picked out and the shading is done by the original colour. Just repeat the same on the other side. And that just gives them, it still looks like skin, but it's a very pale, sickly sort of colour, like they haven't seen much sunlight. And that is the effect that you want for the Dark Elder there. That's how I do Dark Elder skin. And it's the exact same process for the bone here for these. So just paint over the Spatty Bone, and then pick out the extreme highlights with the Spatty Bone and the white. I'll paint that up and then you'll see what it looks like. Right, so that's the highlighting done on the bone for them. As I said, same process for the skin. Just go over it in Spatty Bone, and then a final extreme highlight with the Spatty Bone and the white. And that's picked out the skulls on there in just exactly the same way. Looks nice to get that done. More details being picked out, and again, just enhancing the look of the model overall. Just going to go on to the next stage. We're on to a difficult stage now. It can be difficult. That's the model's pretty much done. We're going to do the extreme patterning. You don't have to do this patterning, you can leave it as it is. The model's pretty much ready for gaming with. But I like to add, I like the green, so I've added a pattern here, and then to counterbalance it I introduce another colour. Usually it's blue. For this commission it'll be red, so you're going to see a change in colour here, just to show that you can use any colours that you want. But I'll do the green first. I've got it on the left hand side, and if you've seen the models, it's kind of a... I worked on a number of different patterns on the early Dark Elder that I painted when I was practicing, and then I developed this one pretty much because it's easier to do, and still looks pretty good. It's just a number of directional lines, thick and thin. I do two thicknesses, a thick and then a thin, and I just alternate them around, and it sort of looks like a circuit board almost style, and that kind of goes with the theme of this Dark Elder army. They're hunting Necrons, hunting machines, and they've developed this nano poison in their weapons that sort of short circuits the Necrons. That kind of, I wanted that Necron hunter, I wanted to reflect that in the actual patterning of the vehicles. So I've got here a detail brush, and you just choose what lines you want to do, thick or thin. I'm going to run a thin line, and obviously each one's unique, but I want to run a thin line down the very edge of the vehicle here. Again, your brush, nice fine tip. I use a brush that's just been washed out, so the bristles are damp, wet, and then also the actual paint itself is nice and thin as well. Now I'm using it straight from the pot, but it has been thinned. I'm just going slightly over the edge there, so use my finger just to take off the excess. And then just looking at that line, I'm making sure it's nice and even. I think that looks pretty good. See how striking that is? Just livens up the figure. I'm going to rotate the model round, and I'm going to paint a thin line then going up, running parallel with this gap in the panelling. I'm actually going to run a thin line up there. I'm then going to run, I'm just going to use my fingernail again, thumbnail. I'm then going to run a thick line next to it on the other side of the panel, and that's just sort of double the thickness of the thin, and I'm actually going to intrude onto the panelling like so, and then the end I just round it off, sort of a round end to it. You can see that on there. I'm then going to do another fin like that, and then I'm going to do that's pretty much it. I may run this thin one out, be quite bold with this one, and run it past the thick one and end it sort of about here. Quite happy with that. And sometimes I like to paint, keeping your angles right. Look, I'm going this direction, I'm following the direction of the break in the panel there, so keeping that same line, I'm going to run a fin, and then next to it, another fin. And often a double one of those looks quite cool as well, but you're totally free to choose how you want to do it. But that's quite straightforward. It's just a series of lines. There's no big swirly complicated patterns to do, and yet it looks quite effective. I'm just going to repeat that process on here, the other black panel. I'll do a similar pattern for that as well. Right, so just done the paneling on the front. Again, I've just chosen, it's just random. I've done a double one here, and then just running the pattern up just there as well. I've done a thick line along this edge, and then I have actually run the green along the side as well. It's up to you. Again, there's no hard and fast rule to it, but I like to just run that nice and side along there if I do a thick line. So that's that done. Then over on the other side, I'm just going to repeat the process. Then you take a contrasting colour, Red and green looks cool, red and blue looks good, that's the colour that I chose. For this commission, as I said, I'm doing the red. Wazdakka red is the colour I'm going to use, because it actually goes on in one coat onto black, and that means that it's not going to build up layers of cloggy paint. One coat will do and that'll look fine. General rule is I don't want to make it exactly the same pattern on the other side. I want it to look slightly different. Just following the same rules, but I don't want to make a duplicate here. So this pattern will need to be different on this side. I'll just do this panel here. So this time I might go for a solid panel, like so. Now I'm going to run it all the way along. You see the Wazdakka red? It just goes on in one coat. I'm going to run it all the way out here. Again, this paint has been thinned, as I said. Just going to work the paint up. If you make a mistake, just take your black paint, paint over it, and then start again. It's come out alright this time. And as I said, as I've done a solid thick colour, then I'm going to paint the reverse side here with the red. So that looks quite good, that's quite different. And then I'm going to run another thing you can do is, you see the curve here, you can follow that, take advantage of it there. So I'm going to put a thin line on that, and then I'm going to do a thin line on the other one, and then sometimes from that I like to then run a line coming out from it. So I'm going to go for a thin one, and it's going to come quite far out into the panelling. Just using the brush, applying the brush a bit harder just to thicken that up. Looking good. Okay. Then I'm going to stick a double in. I'll do it here. Trying to keep it parallel. 1, 2, and then why not? I'll put 3 on. There. Just trying to get that balance, trying to make it looking filled out. It looks pretty good. I'm going to run one more from here to here, like so. Quite happy with that. Again, different style, but balanced. Now you can see that you've got both patterns on. That's looking nice. Really does liven these up. So I'm going to repeat the process just on this front panel as well. Right, so just on the highlight here, going to highlight these panels just to enhance them a bit more. So Evil Sunz Scarlet, it's just a bit of a stronger, brighter red, and then because it's a highlight, I'm going to add a little bit of Flash Gitz yellow to it. Just makes it a bit brighter. I don't want to make it a strong orange, but I do want it to be a proper highlight, and then I just run it around the edge of these panels. But I don't go too strong. I don't want to destroy the red. I just highlight some of it. You can see there that I've picked out some of the detail, but not all of it. I leave plenty of the Wazdakka red exposed, just on the extreme areas. The thin lines, I'll leave them completely. I'll not put any of the highlight on them. Just the thick lines and edges, I put some of this highlight. So just here, run it down. And then just a bit of the edge, it just livens it up a little bit more. Again, it's not one you have to do, but that's that highlight finish. It just picks it out just that little bit more. Then the other highlight on the other side, I take the Moot green, and then some of the Flash Gitz yellow, about half of it yellow, maybe a bit more. The yellow is quite thin and not too strong in pigment. And then again, same principle, just I pick out some of the colour. So the thick line I've picked out there, this edge I'll pick out, and then some of the length of this thick highlight, especially around coming towards the front. That's it, and that just enhances that just a bit more. Then along the back here, a bit of the thick line, and then some, just the edge actually of this line here, and then just a little bit towards the tip. And that's pretty much it. It's just a slight highlight. You don't have to do it, but it just shows that you've picked that out and enhanced it just a bit more. So now you have your patterning done. I think it looks pretty good. You've got two contrasting colours there. You can do any colour combination that you want, and I think that patterning just takes that from being an average colour scheme to something quite striking. And there is a psychological part to games. You want your figures to look bright and dazzling and striking, and it does have, I believe it has a psychological impact. It makes this small little vehicle look something more than what it actually is. Right, so the final effect is a chipping effect. It looks especially good on these black panels here. So I just take the Ironbreaker. I've got a detail brush. The paint's nice and watered down, it's got a nice flow to it. Take some paint at the end of the brush, and I just pick out little dots and scrapes. Just run it along the edge there. Pattern's already done. If you interrupt the pattern, that's fine, because it looks like the pattern's been painted on and it's been battle worn and chipped, so that's fine to do that. Just picking out a few corners here. The trick is not to do too much. It's just getting that balance right. So first of all, I'm just picking out the edges with some scrapes. Got no fear about going on to the patterns that I've done. Then you can do little scratches. Two lines next to each other looks quite good. So that little scratch I've put on there. You just do them in different directions. I'm going to put one here going in this angle. I'm going to do one like that, where it's pushed through into a building or scraped past a tree or something. Then it's going to have these bashes on it and scrapes. See that I've made a number of marks there. So you can see the scratches and the marks on there. Then once that's done, you logically think, where's the most wear and tear going to be? It's going to be at the front. So I then intensify the scratches and the dots on there, because logically that's where it's going to get worn out the most. See that, just that increase there. And then remember to do the side parts here, so put some run along the edge and then intensify it towards the front. That's just scratching on there, looking good. I'm going to put some on the side here. You can see it there, just intensifying it. And that looks pretty good, just a little bit on the end. And that's the chipping on there looking nice. And it really does create the effect that the whole vehicle is made of solid metal sheet. And it's logical that it would get scrapped up and scratched like that. So that's that effect on there. I'm just going to repeat it on the other panels at the back here as well. Right, so that's all the chipping done. You see I've repeated it here on the panels at the back, on this side as well. Then just logically again, the vehicle's travelling in this direction, so I've done a few scrapes coming back in this direction, similar to how I did it here. I've done just a couple of scrapes there. I've done the underside as well, just picking out some scrapes and scratches on there, but you can see that really does create a nice metallic kind of look to the vehicle. It helps finish it off, but that vehicle is actually finished now. I'm just going to zoom out here. So that Venom's finished. See how we build it up now, the highlights are done, we've enhanced it, those final highlights, and then just that, adding that colour to the panelling there, just lifts that vehicle and makes it more interesting and striking in colour. But there it is. So the final stage then, you've got basing to do if that's what you want to do. I'm keeping this base plain, stuck in place, so I'll just super glue it here into position, or you can leave them loose. to take off during games if you want to. And then I will give, before I base it, I'm going to give this a spray of Games Workshop Purity Seal. As I mentioned on the channel in another video about varnishing, it's light coats of the Purity Seal, not a heavy coat. You don't want to make this all misty looking. You want to preserve this metallic finish. It's a light coat of Purity Seal, and that will enhance that. I'll give it a spray and you'll see what I mean. Right, so that's the varnishing done. You see the sheen on that? Like a satin finish, and it especially helps metallic vehicles or metallic parts to a model. The black's nice and unified, nice and strong, nice and rich, and it's just enhanced the whole figure there. But that's what the Purity Seal does. And you can see the shimmer that you're getting off the metal there. So that's that nice metal, but it's not a standard metal. That blue and the green has made it an interesting sort of colour. But there it is. That's the in-depth painting tutorial for Dark Eldar. We've covered skin, we've covered vehicles, panelling, chipping effects, highlights, shading and so on. That's all covered in this. I hope that's a help to you. It's the same technique for all of the Dark Eldar vehicles. Just take license to it how you want. Choose what panels you want done in black. On the channel here is a full painting reference for all of my Dark Eldar models. So if you want to know how to paint Raiders, Ravagers and the Flyers and so on, then just check out that video, and it will give you front, side, rear view images of all of those, and you can use that as your painting reference. So that's the in-depth painting tutorial. I hope it's been a help to you. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time.